Man, if there's anyone waking up this morning with that heavy feeling in their chest, it is the people of Philadelphia. Because what happened in that game was one of those moments that makes any fan put their hands on their head and think, how did this even happen? And the craziest part is that everything started looking like one of those perfect days, one of those games that become a reference when people talk about a dominating start. The team came onto the field flying, playing with an energy that felt impossible to slow down, like nothing could break that rhythm. Within a few minutes, the offense was rolling over everything. The defense was suffocating the opponent, and it finally felt like the team had rediscovered that dominant identity the fan base had been begging to see again. The opening surge was a show of its own. The offense moved down the field with ridiculous confidence, almost like they were practicing against air. Jalen Hurts was distributing the ball with unreal precision, hitting receivers in tiny windows, and every throw seemed to make the crowd grow louder and louder, as if the stadium had turned into their second home. That connection between him and A.J. Brown showed up instantly, and when those two lock into that telepathic mode, you can feel something big getting ready to happen. And it did. 3 drives, 3 offensive explosions, 3 punchlines in a row that pushed the scoreboard to 21-0. At that moment, it felt like the game was already decided. It felt like the story of the day would be about a team that, after weeks of ups and downs, had finally reignited the spark. The problem is that football has a cruel way of punishing any team that relaxes even for a second. And that is exactly what happened. As soon as the lead opened up, it looked like the team eased off, like they figured the job was done. But on the other side was a rival that had zero interest in accepting that script. From that point on, the game turned into the perfect storm of everything a coach fears and everything a fan hates. Penalties stacked up one after another, mistakes piled on top of mistakes, and execution errors completely shredded the offensive rhythm. It felt like every single play had an invisible hand dragging the team backward. Meanwhile, the opponent locked in. Their defense adjusted. They found huge gaps in the secondary. They hit deep passes, and they slowly turned a giant hole into a massive pathway back into the game. Philadelphia's defense tried to hold on and even force some big plays, but there were too many holes to patch. Players kept going down with injuries, the secondary lost stability, and suddenly every deep throw felt like another nightmare waiting to unfold. And speaking of repetition, there were long completions, conversions in clutch moments, and that uncomfortable feeling that the comeback was inching closer and closer with every drive. The moment when everything truly felt like it was slipping away was when the offense had a chance to breathe, regroup, and regain momentum. But they never did, and that is what made it so frustrating. Even with the game tightening up and the stadium turning hostile, there were clear chances to put the game away. But then came the mistakes. A muff punt that hit the turf, a perfect punch knocking the ball out of Saquon Barkley's hands, and a kick sailing wide exactly when the team needed points just to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, the rival did the complete opposite. They capitalized on every mistake, every free yard, every piece of space. They approached the end zone with ease, hit big plays naturally, and began stacking yards like they were facing a defense that had never practiced together. More than 470 yards allowed, almost 7 yards per play, and a sequence of errors that would make any coach pull their hair out. What hurt the most was seeing the team completely frozen after such an electrifying beginning. Not a single point in the second half. Nothing in the third quarter. Nothing in the fourth. 41 straight minutes without moving the scoreboard. That is not just an execution problem. That is a full-blown collapse. And when the offense collapses like that, there is no defense in the world capable of carrying a high-level game on its own. And when you look at the final score, 24-21, you cannot even say the opponent dominated from start to finish. The truth is much harsher. Philadelphia handed this game away. It was a mental, technical, and strategic meltdown. And the impact on the season is gigantic. The team had the path wide open to control the conference, to chase the top playoff seed, and suddenly everything gets scrambled again. The rival closes the gap, the margin for error disappears, and the rest of the season becomes a test of emotional toughness. And it gets even more intense. The next game is against a team arriving hungry, confident, and aware that facing a shaken Philadelphia squad could be the perfect opportunity to create even more chaos in the NFC. If Philadelphia loses that matchup, the entire conversation changes. The pressure doubles, the doubts triple, and that early season shine turns into nothing more than a distant memory. It is impossible to ignore what happened with the offensive control. Jalen Hurts did not play poorly, not even close. He delivered the ball, carried the offense when he could, scored touchdowns, and kept fighting. The receivers did their part as well. A.J. Brown cleared the 100-yard mark. Devonta Smith created separation and executed his routes flawlessly. But none of that matters when penalties keep pushing the offense in a 2nd and 20, 3rd and 15, and impossible situations caused by someone lining up wrong or putting their hands where they should not. And you could feel the entire team walking off the field with that uncomfortable sense of waste. Because everything was there, everything was working, and out of nowhere, everything evaporated. Penalties destroyed promising drives. The missed long kick killed the momentum. The offensive line was bullied inside the entire game, opening 0 running lanes and leaving the offense predictable and easy to defend. And when that happens against a rival of this magnitude, the chances of losing skyrocket. So the conversation about responsibility naturally starts, and it is impossible not to look at the coaching staff. Discipline comes from the top. Halftime adjustments come from the top. Keeping the aggressive mentality after building a lead comes from the top. And none of that showed up. The team became static, predictable, anxious, and paid the price. And as the dust settled after that collapse, the questions hanging in the air were heavier than any hit delivered on the field. You could feel that shift in energy, that tightening in the atmosphere, because everyone knew this was not just another loss. This was the kind of defeat that exposes cracks you hoped were not really there. It was the kind of game that forces everyone to look in the mirror, from the coaching staff all the way down to the last man on the depth chart, and ask why a team with so much talent keeps stumbling over the same mistakes. Philadelphia did not get outplayed for 4 quarters. Philadelphia fell apart, and that difference says everything. What makes this even harder for the fans is how familiar some of these issues are becoming. Week after week, the same themes keep showing up. Penalties derail drives. The offensive line collapses on the interior. The run game becomes non-existent. The team gets conservative at exactly the wrong time. And it raises the question that every frustrated fan was asking before they even left their seat. Why does this keep happening? How does a team that starts games with aggression and creativity suddenly look scared to take risks once it has the lead? It is almost like the moment the scoreboard gets comfortable, the entire mindset changes. Instead of attacking, they try to protect. Instead of dictating the pace, they play as if they are waiting for the opponent to make a mistake. But in the modern NFL, waiting is a death sentence. Teams are too explosive, too fast, too prepared. Give them an inch, and they will take the entire field. And that is exactly what Dallas did. They did not panic. They kept firing downfield, kept exploiting matchups, kept stretching a secondary that was losing bodies by the minute. They smelled hesitation, and they attacked it. That shift in mentality is where coaching becomes impossible to ignore. Because discipline, aggression, attention to detail, those elements come from leadership. They come from the tone set Monday through Saturday. They come from a message the players hear every time they step into the meeting room. So when a team racks up double-digit penalties, many of them procedural and completely avoidable, it is not just a bad day. It is a sign that something is not being reinforced strongly enough. And when a team's identity evaporates once it has a lead, that is a sign that the message of staying aggressive is not sticking. The offensive line issues are becoming another storyline that cannot be brushed aside. The interior simply has not been holding up. When the middle of the line collapses, everything falls apart. The run game becomes predictable and ineffective. The quarterback loses the clean pocket he needs to step into his throws, and the offense becomes limited to quick passes and sideline throws that defenses can sit on. And that is exactly what happened. Every run up the middle felt like it was getting swallowed instantly. Every attempt to set up play action felt doomed from a snap, and every drawback came with a sense of urgency that made it impossible to develop deeper concepts. Even with all that, the playmakers fought. Jalen Hurts kept his composure. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith kept finding ways to make themselves available. Dallas Goedert worked his routes. The pieces were not the problem. But football is a chain, and when one or two links start snapping, the whole structure gives way. You could feel the frustration building in the huddle, especially when big gains were wiped out by a yellow flag sitting in the middle of the field like a slap in the face. Penalties were not just costing yards. They were stealing momentum, ripping away confidence, and turning winnable situations into pressure cookers. Even the crowd felt it. Those thousands of fans who had traveled, who had turned a rival's stadium into a sea of green, suddenly found themselves watching in disbelief as the scoreboard flipped and the energy collapsed. You could see the disbelief on their faces each time a penalty backed the offense into another long yardage situation or another deep pass sailed perfectly into the hands of the opponent's receiver. The kind of silence that fills the visitors section in a stadium like that is not a quiet silence. It is a heavy one, full of confusion and anger and that sinking feeling that the game is slipping through your fingers. The real twist in all this is how different everything looked in the first half. For 30 minutes, the Eagles were the team everyone expected them to be. Fast, sharp, efficient, unpredictable. And then the second half arrived like a completely different universe. The plays got slower. The decisions got safer. The offense looked hesitant, almost cautious, like they were afraid to make mistakes instead of trying to make plays. And when a team plays scared, the opponent smells blood instantly. That spark that Philadelphia showed early on never returned, and the scoreboard told the story. 0 points in the second half from an offense that had scored 3 touchdowns in the blink of an eye. As the game reached its final minutes, it felt like the entire season was holding its breath. This was more than just another divisional matchup. This was a moment that could shape the playoff race, shift the balance of power in the conference, and boost or crush confidence heading into the toughest stretch of the schedule. And when the final whistle blew, the feeling in Philadelphia was not just disappointment. It was something deeper. It was the sense that the team had severely hurt its own chances, that had let the door swing wide open for the rest of the conference to catch up. With the next matchup looming, the stakes get even higher. Philadelphia cannot afford to carry this mental fog into another game. Not with the season tightening, not with teams circling like sharks, sensing vulnerability, not with the standings shrinking and every mistake becoming twice as costly. This next test is not just about winning. It is about proving to themselves that the collapse was not a sign of something bigger breaking underneath the surface. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest updates on our Philadelphia Eagles. And don't be shy. Share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Philadelphia appears to be buzzing with a rumor that has swept through front offices and locker rooms alike. Zack Martin, one of the most respected linemen of his generation, is said to have put pen to paper with the Eagles. Nothing has been officially confirmed. No cameras have captured a handshake, and no team executive has stepped in front of a microphone. Yet the whisper has grown loud enough to rattle the entire league. If true, it would mark one of the most surprising shifts of the offseason and an unexpected twist in a career long associated with consistency and loyalty. Around the league, players and analysts are reportedly scrambling to make sense of the move. Some suggest that Philadelphia quietly positioned itself for weeks, offering Martin not just a contract but a vision, one in which his veteran presence would anchor a line undergoing subtle reinvention. Others believe that Martin, ever the technician, saw an opportunity to extend his prime by aligning with a team known for maximizing trench talent. The rumor has ignited speculation about what the Eagles' offensive identity might become with a stabilizing force like Martin in the mix. Coaches from rival teams are said to be reviewing tape, imagining how an already physical unit might evolve with one of the game's premier guards joining the fold. Inside fan circles, the chatter is nonstop. Social media threads, anonymous messages, and late-night call-ins all revolve around the same question. Did the Eagles actually pull it off? If the signing is real, the ripple effect could be immediate. Agents may rethink negotiations, contenders may rush to fortify their rosters, and young linemen may find themselves studying Martin's every move with renewed urgency. Until there is a statement, a photo, or an official release, everything remains suspended in speculation. But the noise is growing, and in the world of football rumors, volume often tells its own story. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Philadelphia Eagles, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.